Kia ora koutou, it's 1 o'clock. Welcome to this meeting of the Dunedin City Council's Community and Culture Committee. We have no requests for public forum that I'm aware of. We have an apology from Councillor Wilson. I'll move that be accepted. Seconded from... Oh, we haven't received an apology from Councillor Hall. Oh, good. Okay. We have apologies for lateness from Councillor Hall and for absence for Councillor Wilson. I'll move that those be accepted. Seconded, Councillor Elder. All those in favour? Those against? That's agreed. Confirmation of the agenda. I'll move that we confirm the agenda with the following alteration with regard to Standing Order 2.1, Option C be adopted. Seconded, Councillor Elder. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? That's agreed. Declarations of interest. Are there any amendments aside from those which were made yesterday to the interest register? There being none, I'll move that we note the elected members' interest register and confirm the proposed management plan for elected members' interests. Seconded, Councillor Newell. Thank you. All those in favour? Those against? That's agreed. Minutes of committees. I'll move that the Toi Tuatago Settlers Museum Board minutes of 20 February 2019 be noted. Seconded, Councillor Elder. Those in favour? Those against? That's agreed. Part A, reports. The Otago Museum report to contributing local authorities from December and February 2019. Yes, you don't get twice the time though. Dr. Griffin, welcome. We're all yours.
Kia ora tātou. Yes, it's either feast or famine with us. You get one report or two, and the timing of the committee this time means you've got two reports. Obviously, the major event during the period under discussion was the passing of Graham Crombie, and I feel it will be appropriate for me to say that he played a major role at the museum during his time there, and he will be greatly missed. So it was a very sad period for the museum post-February. There have been a lot of things going on, and if you read the report, the first report, we talk about the new freezer at the museum, which is an important piece of infrastructure which allows us to process our collection more efficiently. And during the first report period, we also had a couple of people nominated for Westpac Business Awards, and the museum came away with the Innovation Award this year. So we're very honoured to be recipients of that because the competition was really strong. More recently, the museum team have been busy putting together the 150th anniversary exhibition for the university, which opens at the end of May, and that will be a major exhibition. And then we have another major exhibition opening in July that I can't really talk about at the moment, but we think that's going to be quite an exciting event. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the two reports.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Councillor Gary?
Mr. Griffin, I was interested on page 26. It's talking about human remains and the repatriation thereof. And I wondered what is sort of the quantity? I don't know if quantity is quite the right word, but how many human
well,
remains
obviously,
do we have?
there is a significant number of examples of human remains in the museum. And I can't give you a detailed number, but it's of the order of thousands of pieces of material, not individual individuals. And the museum, as all institutions of our kind in New Zealand, are going through a process of repatriating that, and there is a major piece of work going on at the moment. And we did a huge piece of work over the summer with a volunteer from Kaitahu to identify the material that we have. And over the next year or so, a lot of it will be repatriated. Some of that will be from our museum to the individual iwi. Some of that will be our museum working with other museums together. And we also, it's not just New Zealand material, we took part in a repatriation of material from Rapa Nui, Easter Island, along with the Canterbury Museum. That was late last year. So this is appropriate. I think museums in the past collected in very different ways, and I think the way society treats this material has definitely changed in the last 5 to 10 years, and I'm very proud of the fact that our museum is doing the right thing here and playing its part in returning material that needs to go home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elder.
I've seen on page 41 that you have applied to MBIE for unlocking tourist minds around. So how much in total have you got for educating our young people and our children?
Well, those 3 grants you got there come to the best part of $76,000. But we've been very active in the last period of time seeking out additional funding for programs at the museum. So I think in the second report we talk about 2 lottery fund, two year 250 lottery funds that we won. One by our head of education, Kate, is doing outreach across the South Island to do with first contact between Maori and Pakeha. And then another program that I won is doing a national program of outreach associated with the Transit Mercury later this year. So I think in the last year we've brought in the best part of, I think, something like $700,000 worth of lottery funding or grant funding in support of the activity at the museum. And all of that is money that goes directly into the programs at the museum, and some of it offsets some of the running costs. So we are quite active in this area.
I think it's fantastic. It's
Thank you.
fantastic news that you've got about 700,000. And I see you're doing a lot of outreach in cargo offering outreach. So what are your plans coming up for outreach?
We've got a significant amount of outreach going on, and in fact there's some outreach going on this week in Queenstown, and I'm very pleased to be able to report to this council that Queenstown Council have decided to give us, the museum, $30,000 a year for the next 3 years, which we learned during a meeting with their chief executive a week or so ago. So obviously we're in Queenstown because they're now actually paying some, or contributing towards the outreach efforts that we do. And all of the outreach efforts that are beyond Otago specifically are funded by specific grants. So some of those Curious Mind grants do fund us going into Southland schools, for example. And we got one Curious Minds grant last year that sent us off into a Pacific island. So again, the museum's very, very active because we've got, not many people know this, we've got the biggest team of science communicators in the country, the biggest professional team of about sort of 7 or 8 professional full-time science communicators, all of them funded by grants, and all of them enabling us to do things for our community that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So I'm very pleased that we've developed this specialism, and certainly that expertise is being acknowledged by continuing grants from people like MB and other, the US Embassy, the British High Commission have all funded some of the outreach work that we're doing.
Just the last question. For children in lower decile areas in particular, the opportunity to enable them to have curious minds and get them involved in the museum. Is there any work going on in that area?
Yes, we do have a couple of grants, and when we opened the planetarium back in 2015, the Perpetual Guardian Foundation gave us a 4 or 5 year period an amount of $25,000 a year specifically to bring rural and low decile students to the museum to see the planetarium shows. And that kind of funding does open up access for those groups, because we do recognise not everybody can afford to either pay, or actually sometimes the actual cost of transport is a barrier. So we are active in initiatives to try and reduce those costs as much as we can for schools and for communities where they can't actually fund the visit.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Lofisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Griffin. I'm following up on Councillor Elder's question about education, particularly the He Hururu Manu Conference for Kids. When you talk about low decile schools, how many are there, and do you have to name them as such?
You're asking the wrong person, because I don't know exactly how many there are, and I would have to refer that to. I can get an answer from my education team, but we don't have any external performance indicators that require us to report against that. But internally, a major focus for us is reaching out to those schools which are either low decile or are identified in another way as being in communities of exceptional needs or special needs. So I guess one of the things we are looking at is whether we do need, an annual performance indicator that says this is what we're doing, but we're not, at the moment, we don't have that.
No further questions. Would someone like to move either or both of the reports? Councillor Staines, both of them. Seconded, Councillor Lord. Is there any discussion? Councillor Elder. Would you like to use your microphone?
I just want to say that I congratulate you on all the work that you are doing in creating curious minds from preschool right through to high school, because in fact this is an asset for the whole of the city. Everybody pays either through their rates directly or through being tenants, and so all of our city needs to enjoy the museum and make it a home that they visit and enjoy, and so that it encourages them to be engaged in learning in a very active way. And I just want to say thank you for all the work you've done, and I congratulate you on that.
Thank you, and we couldn't do it without the support that we get from our community, and we do appreciate the funding that we get from DCC and the other funding bodies, because that allows us to do these things. So thank you.
I'll put it. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? That's agreed. Thank you, Dr. Griffin. Item 8, Community and Culture Non-Financial Activity Report for the quarter ended 31 March 2019. Ms. Graham, Mr. Dixon, Mr. Coffey, welcome. Any or all of you care to make any introductory remarks?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take the cultural parts of the report as read. Just make one note that we have added a section into the report to reflect the work of the Aratoy Strategy Team, which is a fairly new development within the group.
Through the Chair, also just to note that in item 3, the launch of the Youth Vision, there was a wee bit of wording left off that, and that should have been the launch of the Youth Vision art competition, of which we received some 50-ish presentations from young people, both electronically and in hard copy, and have made a selection. I think that's been announced on the DCC Facebook. So Nicole Robson was the piece of artwork chosen, and she's coming in tomorrow to do some wee touch-ups to that. So the actual launch of the Youth Vision is the 16th of May.
Great. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I had two questions. One, I was really interested in if you had any reflections on the decrease in satisfaction over a number of the tables. I wondered if there was a seasonal aspect to that in some regards.
In my sense, these are just 2-month results, I believe. And I think that once the third month is factored in, I would expect them to be more in line with what you would expect.
Thank you. And my other question was around 45 and 46 in particular, and great to see Te Rauni Reserve and Beach Replenishment Project in there in terms of art and creativity and infrastructure. I know that the Peninsula Connection, the timing was out in terms of getting in first, but I'm interested to know what is being thought of around that project, because it's a considerable infrastructure project, and certainly in the community there's a desire to see what's going to be done in a creative sense.
I can speak only to an aspect of this, and I'm sure Nick will be able to speak to more. But Mr. Saunders advised yesterday that he is working alongside Ngaitahu to do a series of interpretations along that route that reflect the cultural narrative of the area. So that in what form that will take is being worked through, but I think that's a really exciting innovation and something that we've not done in the past.
That's great news, thank you.
And I think just to add to that, there will be obviously some intervention from the arts and culture team, but we are waiting for the consultation with Mana Whenua in the first instance, and I think that's an appropriate way to go forward with the project in that place and in that environment.
Thank you very much.
Other questions, Councillor Wiley?
Thank you. Question mostly for Nick. When I'm looking at the numbers for the art gallery visitation, Toitu and Chinese Garden, as we go through, obviously Chinese Garden with the new year in February, how much of the cruise ship season has impacted these numbers?
It's a difficult assessment to make because you've got growth in cruise ships, but then you've got a nice summer, and nice summers do not make for good museum visitor figures. Clearly, there is an impact on the art gallery's figures, and that's to be welcomed. But I think a combination of the good weather over the summer and the fact, of course, that we are temporarily focusing on the back of house, getting the back of house functions of the museum up, has meant that we've probably resulted in that slight decrease. I mean, I would accept that. I would emphasise that we're still well in excess of the target for visitation there. And as we get the back of house completely bedded down, which we're in the process of doing right now, we'll be in a position to reinvest in the front of house through the temporary exhibitions and through a slightly increased public programme, and look forward to turning that trend around. Ulverston is looking very healthy this year, and that the visitation there is pretty much very strongly driven by the cruise ship market. So there's a trade-off between, as I say, the fact that it's nicer to be on the beach in a good summer and the continuing growth in cruise ships. So.
Okay, so when I'm looking at the Ulster numbers, they are good, and there's a good number there, and there's also good revenue generated from the cruise ship industry coming through there.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely.
This council has looked, I think since January 2014, we had a paper where we look at creating revenue from cruise ship passengers at the likes of the Art Gallery, Toitu, and Chinese, and even more from Chinese Garden.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that we are looking forward to continuing developments in. We've recently appointed a new commercial manager with a responsibility across the Art Gallery, Lanyuan, and Toitu, and we'll be looking at ways of capitalising on that increased and on the continued growth in the cruise ships over the next few months. We'll be developing
and packaging product and creating
absolutely,
revenue,
paid for experiences and so on. Absolutely, that's key to her approach. But as I say, she's only really very recently joined us, and so over the next few months we'll be looking for detailed proposals around improving our performance in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The corollary being, as we'll see at the next meeting, a very busy summer for our swimming pools. Councillor Lawfisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just speaking, I guess, as a governor in relation to the post-March 15 event. So I just want to express my personal thanks to the staff for the extraordinary response and the long hours that you had to do in terms to responding on our behalf and supporting the communities. So I just want to ask if, I don't know if we were prepared for this in any way, but was there a consideration of having extra staff on or temporary staff to assist you through this workload?
At the time, it was the council team that pulled together, and other teams apart from ours. We were impacted, but also just dropped things. And if we asked for it, we got what we wanted. So it was, it was a full council effort to get this over the line. And yes, there has been extra support brought in. Currently, we have a young lady who's employed 3 days a week, and she is going to work with the community to help respond to all of their email requests and offers of help, to try to categorise them, put them in, and actually get some coherent responses for for the community. And also our Keep Dunedin Beautiful coordinator, who does 4 days a week. She's, for the last 5 weeks it is, and we'll have another one to go, is assisting with the Facebook feedback. So we have had the resource, but the actual events team and the other team around them do enormous amount of long hours.
And if I might, I'm sitting in for Ms Gunn today, who is taking well-deserved time off with her family this week to recognise the extraordinary hours that both she and the team did. So.
Councillor Elder.
Just a quick question to Nick, just about that. We've hired someone to look at making our facilities, our public facilities more resilient by creating income streams through them. And I note that the shops are doing really well. The concern is that maybe the commercial side would take away from the actual purpose of those places. So can we get reassurance that both are separate and that one won't take over the other?
Well, I'd like to assure you, Councillor, that we're fully committed to, if you like, the professional practice of both the art gallery and the museum. We've got some talented and committed people in there who are putting a lot of work into the back of house at the moment. Now, the back of house, it may not be so visible, but it's actually about the way that we manage the collections, specifically at Toitu. We note in here so the good work that's already happened at Toitu. It is quite. Mr. Pickford and I had a tour of it in the last couple of weeks, and it is quite astonishing the amount of work that's happened in the last 6 months. The large object store is completely reconstructed. It's compliant, seismically compliant. It's addressed a lot of the issues. With respect to commercial activity, I don't think that there's a tension between commercial activity and, if you like, cultural activity in these institutions. A good shop, a good cafe, these are expectations of the public. It's part of the quality of their experience. And in fact, if you're not providing that, then to some degree you're deficient in responding to public need. Also, the third strand, if you like, of commercial activity is around event and venue hire. And again, that's an important part of the mix. Museums and galleries offer a very special environment for events and conferencing and after-hours activities and, private parties even. And they all add to the holistic position of what cultural institutions should be offering. And of course, the contribution they make to the revenue side is to be welcomed and helps to support the professional practice of the curators as well.
Thank you.
Anything further? I've got a couple of questions. One is around the charcoal blue work, and I understand there was a report back to the community last weekend. Just a question around at what point that comes back to a committee or to council for either, an update at least, or any decision points that are required.
Well, we're approaching the end of phase 1, which is the diagnosis phase of the study. And the team have already presented a verbal feedback to Mr. Pickford and myself in the last few days, and they're now in the last stages of producing a formal report, which we anticipate being presented to council or to officers at the beginning of May. That will prefigure the remaining 2 phases of the study, so that the feedback to the community was obviously in advance of that stage 1 report, and so it wasn't as complete as the report we're anticipating at the beginning of May.
Thank you. And my other question was for Ms. Gunn. It's hard to know which of the two of you are best placed to answer it. Perhaps. I'll try you. Just around the interpreter service that has been, yeah, I thought so, that's being jointly funded or resourced by the DHB and the City Council, and just as whether there's been any feedback or we have any early indications of what the uptake of that service has been like and how it's been running?
Unfortunately, I'm not close enough to that detail to know. Sorry,
We'll follow up and send a note
yeah.
with round to councillors once we've got that information.
That's fine, thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll move that the report be noted. Seconded, Councillor Gary. I just wanted to take this opportunity really to thank staff, particularly in the community development team. It's not a large team, but it's been an incredibly busy quarter for that team. Yesterday we had the final meeting of the Mayor's Task Force for Housing. The recommendations, final report and final recommendations of that group will come to the May meeting, but that is that work would not have been as productive as it has been without the support of Mr. Coffey and Ms. Gunn in helping guide that, and from Ms. McLennan Kissel actually in helping organise the Housing Summit, which was an incredibly positive and productive day of conversation, not just with housing providers and social agencies, but more importantly with our development community as well. And I think credit is due to staff for making that as helpful as it has been in terms of helping us come to some resolutions really in how we might start to address our housing challenges. And secondly, as has been noted by Councillor Dorfisa already, and it's a shame that Ms. Gunn's not here to receive this thanks in person, although I know how uncomfortable it would make her. I think the work that the team have done in response to the events on March 15th has been remarkable, not just in terms of supporting our Muslim brothers and sisters, but also the not insignificant task of coordinating communication between the various government agencies and government departments that have been involved in supporting that community, and both here and to and from Christchurch. So my thanks to her. I assume that will be paraphrased and passed on, so thank you for that. Further speakers? Councillor Gary?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what struck me about this report was the breadth of work done by this group of staff. And I was reading the section on the City of Literature and just seeing the international aspect of that. It was quite remarkable what has come out of that Bologna Children's Book Fair, where we won the free stand, and then now there's a book that is being promoted, just as one example. So the breadth of the work done is quite extraordinary, and I think it feeds the soul of our city, and that's never been more obvious than after the 15th of March, and Councillor Hawkins has articulated that very eloquently.
Nothing further, I'll put it. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? That's agreed. Thank you. Item 9, items for consideration by the Chair. Are there any? There being none, that's the end of the meeting, which will be followed by Planning and Environment in 5 minutes, I'm reliably informed. Thank you.